Hi guys, today's topic is going to be over comparing and ordering decimals. Now, before we get into that, I'm going to tell you a quick story, which is going to it's going to lead into decimals, okay? But I thought I'd share with you so you can understand it a little bit better. True story, guys. So one day, my dad, he had all his three grandsons with him at home, and he wanted to challenge them. So on his left hand, my dad was holding a single $5 bill. On his right hand, he was holding three single dollar bills. So he lined up his three grandsons. One of them was my son, JJ, but my son was last. So he asked his first grandson, Mikey, "Hey, Mikey, which hand do you prefer? Do you prefer the amount on the left or the amount on my right hand?" And what do you think Mikey chose? Well, Mikey chose the right hand. He saw it and immediately took the money. Like, yes, I got all this money. So then was my second nephew, whose name is Eddie. So Grandpa asked Eddie, same question, "Hey, Eddie, which hand do you prefer, the left or the right?" And of course, Eddie said, the right. Now, my son was last. Keep in mind, guys, he did go to school since he was 2 years old, okay? So JJ was last, and Grandpa asked him, "All right, grandson, which one do you prefer, the left or the right?" What do you think JJ did? Well, JJ decided to take the amount on the left hand. And of course, his other cousins, they were making fun of him. They're like, "Ha ha, you only got one." And Jay is like, "No, I have $5. You guys only got a total of $3. Now, my question here to you is, what do you think tricked the other two kids? Why did they choose the amount on the right hand? Well, the answer is easy, guys, because it looked like more money. Okay? JJ knew how to read numbers. He understood it. So was that a trick for him? No, it was just common sense. So the reason I'm telling you this is because it's going to lead in to comparing and ordering decimals. Let's proceed and continue talking about money real quick. What if I told you right now that I have this much money in my pocket? How much money do I have? "Oh, well, you have $10, Ms. Benjamin." All right. What if I'm like, never mind. I have this much money. What would you say then? You're going to tell me the same thing. "Miss Benjamin, you still have $10 with zero change." What if I say, "No, never mind. I have this much money. Ooh, look at that. I have all that money." What are you going to say? "No, Miss Benjamin, you still have $10 and zero change." Okay? If you pay attention, guys, from the very beginning, let's look at the first one. The very first one indicates that I have $10 and zero change. Look at my whole number. The second one indicates the very same thing. It indicates that I have 10 whole dollars and zero change. Let's look at the third one. The third one indicates that I have 10 whole dollars and zero change. But just like I told you about the story with Grandpa and the grandkids, just because the last one looked like it was more, does it really mean that it's worth more? No. Okay? All the zeros at the very end of a decimal don't really matter. That means they don't even exist. Okay? We call them placeholders. So if I add more zeros to the first one after a decimal, if I add 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, if I add 9 zeros, look at how big it looks now. Is it going to change the fact that I still have $10? No, I still have 0 cents. Okay? Please make sure you keep this in mind when we're comparing and ordering decimals. Just because a number looks bigger doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Now let's say that your teacher asks you to put the following numbers in order from least to greatest. Now, if you take a look at the numbers, they are going side to side, okay? When we're dealing with decimals, guys, I highly recommend that you line them up and down. We do something called line up the dot, give it all you got. Remember that. Line up the dot, give it all you got. Okay? What that means is that we have to line up our decimal and our place value and put them in the correct place. Okay? Right here you have a place value chart. You're not going to have that throughout the school year. This is just an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these exact same numbers in the way they appear. So the first number I have is 5 wholes. The second number I have is 4 1/100. The third number I have is 4 wholes and 1/10. And my last number is 4 wholes and 2/100. Boys and girls, I have to keep the numbers in the correct place value. Okay, just like I did here. Now let's look at the first number we have on the place value chart. Did I have anything in the tenths or the hundreds place? No, I didn't have anything. I had 0 in the tenths and 0 in the hundreds place. So what I'm going to do is, instead of leaving it blank, I'm going to put 0 in the tenths place and 0 in the hundreds place. Did I change the fact that it was 5 wholes? No, it is still 5 wholes. All right, let's look at the third number right here. I had 4 1/10. Did I have anything in the hundreds place? No, I did not. So what I'm going to do, instead of putting a little question mark, I'm going to put a 0 because I had 0 in the hundreds place. Did I change the value? No, I did not. I just changed the way it looked. Remember earlier we were talking about $10? I can write it like that. I could also write it like this. By adding zeros at the end of a decimal, I do not change the value. Okay, keep that in mind. By adding zeros at the end of a decimal, I do not change the value. So now that I have all my numbers in order, in the correct place order, now that I have them in the correct place order, I can put them from least to greatest. Now let's look at our whole numbers. Least. Which one is the smallest one? Well, right now my eyes should be focused on these 3 because they have 4 as a whole number. 5 is obviously going to be my biggest one. All right, let's read it. 4 2/100, 4 1/10, or 4 100. Well, if you take a look, if you keep your eyes here, which one's the smallest? 1, 10, or 2? I'd say 1. So 4 100. That's my smallest. Scratch it off. I like to scratch it off so I don't skip a number or I don't add numbers. All right, look at where the box is. Keep your eyes where the box is. Which one's the next smallest? 10 or 2? Well, 2's the next smallest. So I'm going to write 4 200. Scratch it off. Obviously, my next one is 4 1/10. Keep in mind, guys, y'all remember that I added this 0? Okay, I just added it to help me visualize the numbers better. But I did not have it here in the problem, so I got to keep the original number. When I'm done, scratch it off. And the last number, obviously the greatest number, would be 5 wholes. Okay, and now I have lined them up in order from least to greatest. Let's say that your teacher asks you to line up these numbers in order from greatest to least. Again, guys, I do not advise you to keep the numbers side to side because looks can be deceiving. It's better to show your work. Always show your work. How do we do that with decimals? Line up the dot, give it all you got. In this case, I'm not providing you with the place value chart. I'm just having you do it by yourself. So let's try this together. I'm going to write the same exact numbers that are on top, but instead of side to side, I'm going to line them up and down. 4 and 1 thousandths. 4 and 9 tenths. Notice that I am keeping my decimals in line. 4 and 9 hundredths. 4 and 36 hundredths. All right. Now line up the dot. Give it all you got. Did I line up my dot? Yes, I did. Now, what can I do to make this be easier for my eyes? Well, I can add 0 here. I can add a 0 and another 0. I can add a 0 and a 0, a 0, and a 0. I added my placeholders. Remember, guys, the zeros at the end of a decimal, those are called placeholders. They're not going to change the value, how much it's worth. Okay, all I'm doing is making it easier for my eyes to visualize it. All right, now this number here has 4 numbers behind the decimal. This one has 4 numbers behind the decimal, 4 numbers behind the decimal, and 4 numbers behind the decimal. Now is it easier for me to put them in order, greatest to least? Yes, it is. So let's try it. Look at your whole number. All of them are the same. So I can't really look at the whole number. I shouldn't really pay too much attention to it right now because they are all the same. Now let's look at our decimals. Let's put them in order from greatest to least. Which one is the greatest? 1, 9,900, or 3,600? Well, in my case, I believe it is 9,000 to be the greatest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this number over here, but I'm only going to use the original number. The original number was 4 and 9 thousandths. Okay, these zeros here are placeholders. They did not provide them for me in the question, so I'm not going to provide it in the answer. All right, I'm done with that one. Scratch it off. Which one's the second greatest? 1, 900, or 3,600? Well, 3,600. So I'm going to move that number right over here. 4 and 36 hundredths. Again, guys, I'm not going to include the zeros as placeholders. That was just for me to make it easier on myself. But the correct number that they used on the question is the same one I have to use on my answer. Now, which one's the next greatest? 1 or 900? Well, I'll say 900. So I'm going to move this number straight over here. 4 and 9 hundredths. Scratch it off. And obviously the last one, the smallest, I'm going to bring it over here, which is 4 and 1 thousandths. 10 thousandths, I'm sorry. Scratch it off. Now, do you see here? It is so much easier when you put the placeholders. It's easier to read, easier to comprehend. And then when you put them in order, you just do it without the placeholders. Again, I'm going to tie it back to the story. Remember the one with the $5 bill and the 3 single dollar bills? Just because one number looks bigger than the other doesn't mean that it is. In this case, if we look at the smallest number, it actually looks like the biggest, but it's not. So please be careful. Make sure you line up the dot, give it all you got. And then always add those zeros as placeholders. Now you give this a shot. Here I have a total of 7 decimals. Put them in order from greatest to least. Now I have them side to side and up and down. Your job is to line up the dot, give it all you got. Make sure you line them up and down, line up the decimal, and put your numbers in the correct place value. Now, while you're working on it, go ahead and put this on pause. In this last slide, you're going to use less than, greater than, or equal to compare the numbers. Now, I'm going to do numbers 1 and 2, and you give numbers 6 and 7 a shot. Let's try number 1. Again, you're going to see this constantly on quizzes, on tests, any papers that you get. The numbers are going to be side to side. I don't recommend you keeping them side to side. I always recommend that you line them up and down. So let's start with number 1. Number 1, I have 0 and 3/10 and 0 and 13/100. Now, what can I put here? I can put a 0 as a placeholder. Now it's much more easier for me to see the numbers. Which one is greater? 30 or 13? Well, 30 is bigger. So I'm going to answer number 1. Now that I proved it and showed my work, it's going to be greater. So 3/10 is greater than 13/100. Now let's try number 2. I'm going to line up the dot, give it all I got. I have 0 and 11/100. I have 0 and 110,000. What can I put at the end of the first number? A 0 as a placeholder. Oh wow, look at that. Now it's so much easier to read. What do you notice about these two numbers? These two are equal. Now, if you look at the original problem on number 2, they try to trick us. They added a 0 here. So we could automatically assume that this number is bigger. But was it? No, they were both equal. Now you give number 6 and number 7 a shot.